evening, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for coming. We're going to get through domestic violence and teen dating today. Looks like about 32 or 34 slides. I'll kind of talk through those as I'm showing you the slides. If there's any questions, you can ask them toward the end, or if they're pressing, just go ahead and ask them. I don't know if I can see the chat since I'm sharing my screen, but I do want to get questions answered. Okay. Here are the training objectives that we're going to be covering today. And as you're looking through those objectives, and I'm sure as all of you know, this is not going to be kind of like a one-stop shop of I've gone through this training and now I'm going to be an expert on this topic. But kind of what the goal is for today is to just hopefully get one or two strategies down, educate yourself a little bit on this topic, and hopefully you leave the training a little bit more informed than you were when you first got here. Okay. All right. So here's how we're going to be looking at teen dating today. Again, as I said before, I'm not going to read the slides verbatim. I'm assuming everyone here knows how to read. So, and that's very monotonous. Nobody wants to sit here and have me read all through the slides. So I'll just kind of, like I said, let you peruse through those as I'm kind of talking in the background. But we're just going to break down exactly what teen dating looks like, kind of what it sounds like, what it is not, and just kind of cover a few topics about that. So we're going to cover a variety of terms in the kind of that realm of teen dating, variety of topics. Yeah, so again, hopefully you're able to pull something out of this course. Okay. For the sake of this training, I will be just using a lot of generic examples, nothing specific. So when I do refer to a teen dating relationship, again, just for the sake of this training, I will be saying, abuser and abusee. Again, just for the sake of this training to help kind of paint a picture of the examples I'll be sharing throughout this course. Okay. So real quick, here is a kind of a brief difference between what courting is and what dating is. So as you see, courting is a little bit more specific than dating. It's usually more serious, involves let's move this to the next level, or let's think about or talk about moving this to the next level. Dating is a little bit more infrequent. It's not as serious, right? So again, that's kind of the definition of the two differences. So again, if you hear someone's courting, they're usually exclusive. They're usually taking steps to take that next step, if you will, in their relationship, versus dating. It could be more casual. Maybe it's involving seeing, quote unquote, more than one person. Okay. So some common / typical dating phrases. Again, I won't go through all these. Keep in mind that this is just based on a myriad of what people mean. When I say people, I mean specifically those in kind of the teenage realm of what we're talking about, of phrases. So all these phrases could mean that they're dating, right? So again, just kind of looking through those. When teenagers typically say, and again, this is not end all be all, this is not all teenagers. Again, we're just kind of generalizing here. So if you work with teenagers or have any association with teenagers, when they say they're dating, this could be a generalized list of what they really mean when they say that type of thing. Okay, because again, it's very general in the teenage world. So I'll leave this up for another second or so and let you kind of look at this. And again, if there's any pressing questions, you can say those to the end or blurt out and ask now. I don't mind. Like I said, I don't know if I can see the chat pop up or not. So if you have a question, make sure you ask, and I'll do my best to get it answered. Okay, here are some general statistics on teen dating. Okay. And again, I won't talk through all those. I'll just kind of let you look at these for a second. Just a couple I want to point out that are a little concerned. Not that everything on here is not concerning, but you see 43% of dating college women, and we just referred to the different, I guess, terms or associations with dating. So again, when it says dating, it can mean a myriad of things, right? 43% report experiencing violence and abuse from a partner. Okay. Down here, 1 in 4 women who experience physical and or sexual violence are first victimized between the ages of 11 and 17. Again, not that one statistic in here is more shocking than the other, but again, just a few that kind of jump out and kind of make your eyes widen a little bit. And we'll be talking about this point here in a few minutes. Kids who witness abuse between their parents are 15 times more likely to enter into an abusive relationship themselves. Okay. So again, just a little bit statistics for you. Very sobering, very eye-opening. But on the flip side, that's why it's so important to talk about subjects like this. Okay. Again, just to give you some awareness, to give you some knowledge. So what exactly is teen dating violence? It's a pattern of an abusive relationship toward one partner in the relationship. So again, as I said, if you have two people in a relationship, the abuser and the abusee, if you notice that first word there, it's a pattern. So kind of in the trauma-informed world, we have acute versus chronic. So acute is usually kind of a one-time type of incident. Chronic usually means ongoing. So teen dating violence usually involves chronic or ongoing abusive patterns. Okay. Not to say that if it just happened once, like if it was acute, that would not have the same effects, but teen dating violence typically entails recurring incidences. Okay. Also, when one or both of the partners is between the ages of 12 and 19, that could be the abuser or the abusee. And it typically involves exerting power over your partner. So again, generally the abuser exerting his or her power over the abusee. Okay. So that entails teen dating violence. A few more statistics here, some risk factors. Approximately 1 in 3 high school students have been or will be involved in an abusive relationship. Again, very sobering, staggering numbers there, right? About 40% of teenage girls say they know someone their age who has been hit or beaten by a boyfriend, okay? And like I said earlier in the previous slide, acute versus chronic, no matter what, it is, again, whether it happens once or it's ongoing, it can be abusive, but again, it's usually chronic. It's usually more ongoing than just the first time, okay? Or just one time, okay? And then our final statistic at the bottom, girls and young women between the ages of 16 and 24 experience the highest rate of intimate partner violence, almost triple the national average. So again, very sad, yet sobering and real statistics. Okay, so we're going to kind of get into the background or origins, if you will. This first bullet I will explain because it can be a little confusing. Most domestic violence experts refer to possible causes as risk factors rather than actual reasons. Okay, so again, what that looks like is if there is an abusive relationship there, we're not saying that the reasons are not important, but especially being in the trauma-informed world, we try to take a look at what are the causes, what's going on behind that abusive relationship, what's causing that, what's causing the abuser to become the abusee. Not saying the reasons are not important, but again, those causes, getting to the root causes of why this is going on is more important. And like I said, I'm not trying to minimize reasons. I'm just saying to get to the root cause, that's where you kind of start to get those wheels turning and those balls rolling, okay? Also keep in mind that teenage violence usually occurs due to a variety of reasons. Okay, so it's just hard to pinpoint one or two things, one or two causes, right? It could be a myriad of things. All right. And again, it does not matter what type of relationship the abuser or abusee are in. It doesn't matter against, as you see there at the bottom, economic or social status, ethnicity, gender, sexual preference, sexual identity. None of it matters. There's no numbers that show one demographic, for lack of a better term, has a higher or lower rate than another demographic. So, like I said, it's kind of the same across all those categories, if you will. Okay. More risk factors include what you see on your PowerPoint. Okay. Aggression and bullying towards family members, believing that abuse within a relationship is acceptable, experiencing childhood trauma, engaging in sexual activity prior to high school with multiple partners, experiencing learning difficulties and other school problems. I have not said this before, but I'll say it, and I'll say it plenty of times. This is not a correlation equals causation thing. Okay. So by that, I mean, so if we look at the first bullet here, exhibiting aggression and bullying towards family members, we're not saying that if there's a teenager that does that, then he or she will enter an abusive relationship either as the abuser or the abusee. Okay, so I need to make that clear that even though a teenager might exhibit some or maybe all of these behaviors, that does not necessarily mean he or she will enter an abusive relationship. What that does mean is that does increase the risk of him or her entering an abusive relationship, either as an abuser or an abusee. Okay? Is that making sense to everyone? I hope everyone's clear on that distinction. Here's a couple of bit more risk factors for you. Okay. So those who have friends involved in dating violence, again, could have an increased risk. Doesn't mean they will, like I just got done saying, but it means that risk can go up. Okay. Same thing with lack of or no parental or adult supervision or support. Okay. Coping with any sort of substances, unmanageable anger, witnessing or experiencing chronic violence. Okay. So again, for the second and not final time, these are not definite risk factors, but again, it can increase the risk or it can increase the chance. Okay. Because keep in mind, no matter in the home how healthy or unhealthy it is, children who turn into teenagers grow up around that. That's normal to them. And I don't like to use the word normal, especially dealing with, this type of realm here. I can't stand using that word, but I've just used it. But again, they're used to it, right? So however you were raised, whatever family practices or common family traditions you were raised with, that's normal to you, right? If the whole family got together on Sunday to have Sunday dinner, right? Or if you got together with friends and family over the holidays, that's a normal common occurrence to you. So it's the same thing in an unhealthy home where there's abuse, where there's neglect, where there's trauma. Kids, and especially kids who are growing up into that environment, think this is how everybody is, right? Again, no matter how unhealthy it is, they think that's something that is more common than it actually is. Okay, so that's what that attribution to risk factors is. Okay. So covering a few teen obstacles here. And again, this is a non-exhaustive list, which means there are more things on this list that are not included, but these are just some general teen obstacles. Peer pressure, right? Dating inexperience or being naive to what dating actually is. Wanting to seek independence out there if you've worked with any sort of teens, the need for independence, right, is there. And then self-perception, how they feel about themselves. Okay, so those are four major obstacles with teen dating violence. All right. So again, young men may believe, and as you see, the word may is kind of underlined and italicized because again, this is not a definite. This is not all young men. But again, thoughts like this can increase the risk of teen dating violence, right? Um, they might have been taught, or they might believe that masculinity includes control and physical aggression, right? They may believe or been taught that they have the right to control female partners or any type of partner in any sort of relationship, right? They might lose respect, from other males or other men, or maybe older men that they look up to, or older people they look up to. If they are attentive and supportive of their girlfriends, that might be looked as a sign of weakness, right? They might also believe or be told that their partner belongs to them. And they might also believe that they can demand intimacy or a sexual relationship from their partner just because they're in a relationship. Okay. So, and again, I also want to stress that one, this is not definite, and two, this does not cross it can cross over genders. This is just more common characteristics of males. Okay. So again, we're not completely cutting out females. Matter of fact, we're going to get into the females at the next slide. But again, this is just a more common belief systems from young men. Okay. And on the flip side of that coin, you've got what some young women may believe, again, for a variety of reasons, what they were growing up around, what they've been taught. As we talked about a couple slides ago, maybe their self-perception might kind of trick their brain into thinking ways like this. It could be a number of reasons. Okay. And again, this is just a generalized list. They might be thinking or might have been taught that the abuse is normal because again, family, friends, upbringing, and again, there's that buzzword again, normal. But again, growing up around that, seeing that on a consistent basis, you might think that's how everybody's home is, right? They might also be tricked into believing that a partner's jealousy can be seen as romantic. Okay. They can also believe that they're responsible for the problems in their relationships. So again, if you have someone or a female with low self-esteem, or maybe not too sure of themselves, or whatever the situation, they might take on those problems that's not really their fault, right? They didn't create it, but they think they're to blame for it. Okay. Some might also believe that having a boyfriend, a partner, is better than being alone, right? So whoever the person is in a relationship, he or she may not be the healthiest person for me, but that's better than being alone, right? They might also think that there is no one to ask for help, and this is a part of a huge guilt complex. They might feel so guilty about what's going on in the relationship, and if you look at a couple of pointers up, they're going to think that they're responsible. So a lot of their thought process is, if I reach out for help, even though I feel like I really need help, if I reach out, I might be in the wrong. I might be to blame. I'm probably definitely going to get in some sort of trouble. So maybe it's best if I just keep my mouth closed and let it continue to happen. Okay. And like I said, I said it before and I'll say it again. This is not strictly a male versus female thing. It's just more common for males to be taught what we saw in the previous slide, and for females to be taught this. Okay. I want to make sure that distinction is clear for everyone. A little bit more statistics for you. Again, I won't go through all those. I'll kind of let you look through these. And again, we'll kind of cover some of these a little bit later on. Okay. As you're looking through these, if you have any questions, if you need any follow-up, like I said, now's a good time to ask, or you can save it till the end. And this one, as you are perusing through these numbers, kind of keep your eye on the bottom one here, especially as we get into the digital abuse. That's becoming more of a trend now, and that's a little bit harder to track just because the internet is growing and it's getting so big, and this digital world is getting so big. It's just kind of hard to track that a little bit more because it's so easy. It's again, it's so easy to send a message, right? Or send a tweet or text or whatever versus having people face to face, right? All that stuff can be done a little bit quicker. So those numbers are a little bit harder to track. So, okay. So as you look at these, again, not that they're not alarming, as I have said, but keeping in mind, we've talked about risk factors and we talked about reasons why this might happen. Even though, again, we're looking over this and we're like, how can these numbers make sense? How can this be? Keep in mind that you've got young men and young women who have higher risk factors of being in an abusive relationship. So again, this is perfectly not out of the realm for them, if that makes sense. Okay. So again, just for, again, a loose example here, if there is an abuser and abusee in a relationship and you look at the bottom, maybe the abuser is forcing the abusee to provide, as you see, network passwords, maybe credit card information, just because the abuser has convinced the abusee that he or she needs to track that because there could be maybe a sense of jealousy there, a sense of control, as we've talked about earlier. So the abuser wants to keep tabs on the abusee by checking social media sites, by checking chat threads, by checking text messages, by checking bank accounts, credit card statements, just to make sure that the abusee is not going behind the abuser's back and doing anything that the abuser does not approve of. Okay, so again, in a brain that's not surrounded by that, you might think that's crazy, right? Like, why would I want to share my password? Like, why don't you just trust me? But you have to think kind of in the realm of this abusive relationship and how that is seen as not as outlandish, right? So again, just a little loose example there. So here's typically a typical cycle of abuse that we see that are very prevalent in abusive relationships. We have the tension. Keep in mind that the tension can be completely fabricated by the abuser, okay? It doesn't have to have any realness or any weight to it, okay? So just for example, just kind of coming off of one of the examples that we shared earlier, let's say abuser and abusee are walking into the high school. They're going to high school. It's the beginning of the day. They're walking to the building. Abusee sees a friend, and they start talking. The friend opens the door for the abusee just to be nice, right? Just to be polite because they're just friends and they want to be nice. However, the abuser may see that and misinterpret that as a sign of flirting, as a sign of whoever opened this door has got to be into the abusee, right? They have to be into my partner because why else would they open the door, right? And the abusee was very nice and said, hey, thank you. And there might have been some flirting there. So again, all this is fabricated and it just kind of like it expands in the abuser's mind. And next thing you know, there's a tension there because the abuser confronts the abusee and kind of makes an issue out of this, right? And so now there's tension, okay? So let's just say it, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and they connect after school. They're going on a date or going over to each other's houses or whatever. Abuser doesn't drop it, is questioning the abusee, escalating the situation. Why did he or she open the door for you? I know they like you. I've seen you guys talk in the hall, that kind of stuff. And then, like I said, just blowing up the issue, making it bigger. And then next thing you know, you have the abuse. You have the actual physical act of abuse, the mental act of abuse, whatever realm that abuse falls in, it happens. Just again, based, if you're looking at your screen there, the attention escalates into the actual abuse, right? So abuser blows up however he or she does when they become abusive in the relationship. And then after that, you kind of have that honeymoon, that makeup of, maybe the abusee cuts the abuser off. That's it. That's the last straw. I told you, if you do A, B, or C again, we're breaking up. You've done it again, so we're breaking up. A few days pass, maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months. Abuser kind of has that remorseful, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It was a one-time thing. I only got jealous because I like you so much. And then, kind of what I say adds a little salt and pepper to it and say, I would never do anything to hurt you, even though they just did, right? I love you. I want to be with you forever. Kind of that, as I call it, that kind of that sad puppy dog remorse of, I'll look at you all wide-eyed so I can just win you back. And typically, again, keep in mind, as we talked about earlier, the abusee, let's kind of toss in one of those risk factors, right? Maybe the abusee has a history of seeing parents or adult figures in abusive relationships, and they think this type of behavior is normal, right? So what happens? They end up kind of going back on their word, taking abuser back, accepting apologies, accepting letters, accepting gifts, accepting money, that kind of stuff. So there's that honeymoon and then makeup. And then a little bit later, that tension happens again, completely fabricated, maybe something that was not even there. And then you see that kind of really, really unhealthy cycle of abuse. Okay. So that's just kind of walking you through what that looks like and why it's there. Okay. So real quick, we're going to talk about a few types of violence. As we just kind of got done mentioning, when people hear abuse, they think of physical abuse. It could be, different categories of abuse. Okay. So again, the abuser partner tries to maintain power and control through different types of violence. And again, it doesn't have to be physical, because I know our brain, when we hear violence, we think physical, hitting, pushing, punching, but it can be very subtle as well, especially based on, and I'm sorry for this term, how the abuser abuses. Again, I know that's it kind of gives you a little icky feeling, but again, not all abusers do it the same way. Some of it can be very subtle, just like what we got done talking about in that makeup phase, right? Of, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it, kind of that charming type of way, right? That is a form of abuse as well, because that's not genuine, right? That's kind of using your power and control to kind of win that abusee back, if that makes sense. Okay. Also, keep in mind that they're not exclusive of each other. There could be more than one type of violence. Someone can be physically violent, and then, sexually violent as well. They could be physically violent, and they could be neglectful. They could be physically violent and psychologically violent. So again, it doesn't have to be just kind of one category. As you see down here, an abuser kind of likes to mix it up and keep the abuse off balance. And that's unfortunately a common strategy with abusers. I'll kind of do this over here this way to kind of keep you where I want you, because again, a lot of it is through power and control. That's kind of what they're going for. Okay. So real quick, we have physical abuse, which a lot of us know what that means, but there's kind of a really brief kind of a Cliff's Notes definition for you. All right. Also, keep in mind that abusers are well aware of physical abuse, so they're going to do what they can to not leave any evidence, leave any traces of abuse. So if you do have physical abusers, they will inflict their control through the use of physical abuse, but they will be very smart about it. And if they do notice physical signs of abuse, they will come up with a myriad of reasons to provide to the abusee to not make a big deal out of it, right? So again, if there's a mark or scar or something left where it cannot be covered up, then the abuser will try to manipulate the abusee into coming up with an excuse for that mark or scar. Okay? And again, they can be very persuasive as well, right? So again, in our, I guess, healthier brains, we're thinking that sounds crazy. Like, why would you even want to justify someone physically putting a mark on you? But keep in mind the psychology, right? The reasons behind the abusive relationship. Okay. You've got sexual abuse too, and that also does not include like the physical act of sex. It can also indirectly be sexual. So an example of that is the abuser may take inappropriate pictures of the abusee, maybe in undergarments or naked or in compromising positions, and might use that as a tool against the abusee and say, hey, remember, I've got these pictures of you. So if you don't do this, or if you don't bow to my control, then I'm going to put these on social media. I'm going to show your parents. I'm going to show your friends, that type of thing. And again, the abusee feels very guilty about that. However, those pictures were taken during a very intimate time where the abuser was kind of getting in the abusee's head about, I love you. If you love me, you do this. We'll be together forever. All this kind of stuff to manipulate that abusee into, again, control, because it keeps going back to power and control, right? A few more types of abuse. We have psychological and emotional abuse. We talked a little bit about that earlier. And again, keep in mind, as I said, that types of abuse, it can be multiples, okay? It typically starts with this. The abuser tries his or her hardest to get into the abusee's head to try to convince them that the love is real, the affection is real, that the abusee cannot live without the abuser, that the abuser cannot live without the abusee. Yeah, maybe the abuser will say something like, if you leave me, or if you do something that'll hurt me, I will hurt myself. Or, using the example of the friend earlier, if I catch you talking to this friend earlier, because I know there's something there, I know that friend likes you, since they opened the door for you. If I catch you guys talking again, I'm going to go harm myself. And the abusee feels guilty for that. Okay. All that is an example of emotional and psychological abuse, manipulating that abusee into thinking that it's love and affection, if that makes sense. Okay. We also talked a little bit about digital abuse earlier. Again, we're seeing this trend growing, and even though the physical signs aren't there, so again, if there was physical abuse, the signs are easier to see. Digital abuse and psychological abuse is a lot harder to pinpoint because we don't see those physical signs there. Okay. So types of violence: economic and financial abuse, as I alluded to earlier. Maybe the abuser has the abusee giving credit card information, sensitive information for, again, power and control, right? And if you look at some of the examples on the right, that's how the abusees kind of get caught in the unhealthiness of an abusive relationship. Okay. And like I keep saying and keep alluding to, those of us with healthier mindsets would think, why would you co-sign for a car? Why would you do this? Because again, they're fooled and tricked into thinking it's because of love, right? If you loved me, you would do this. If you cared for me, you would do this. Or, as I talked about earlier, if you don't do this for me, I will do this. If you don't do this for me, this will happen. Okay. So we talked a little bit about it earlier. It's a handful of warning signs. Again, not correlation equals causation here, not saying that at all. Okay. So as an example, if you're working with a teenager, associated with a teenager, he or she has failing grades, that does not directly point to him or her being abused or being in an abusive relationship. Okay. That's just kind of a warning sign, or kind of an after sign of the abuse, kind of an effect of the abuse. Okay. Just want to make that as clear as I can. Here's a handful of long-term effects. Okay. If the relationship is not, if there's no intervention, if the abuser and the abusee do not move from a place of unhealthiness to healthiness, some of these things can happen. Okay. So looking over these, that's why intervention is highly vital, no matter where it's caught in the relationship. So, and again, I say that to say, I've had people come to me and say, well, this relationship has been going on, or the cycle of abuse has been going on for years. You know, is there any chance of moving them to a healthy place? The answer is yes, right? We need consistent, persistent, as well as consistent intervention. Okay. And again, we cannot just target the effects. We have to go to the cause. Okay. What has happened? What has happened for you to think that this is okay? All right. Here's a few more long-term effects: physical health, psychosocial health. Okay. Because again, as we know, those teenage brains are growing rapidly. Brain development usually stops in about mid-20s. So again, if there's no intervention for these unhealthy habits, then they're going to enter adulthood thinking that what's happened to them, what's going on with them are okay. And they're going to think these types of unhealthy behaviors in relationships are okay, which they are most definitely not. Okay, so we're going to move into education and prevention. Okay. So female teens are more likely than male teens to seek help. Kind of what I alluded to earlier, but a lot of our males kind of in this population think that it's not okay to ask for help. As again, kind of alluded to earlier, they think that you have to be just rough and tough and you have to man up. Heard that term, man up. Whatever it is, you have to like work through it by yourself. You're weak if you ask for help. You're not really a man if you ask for help. So they try to work through it by themselves, which rarely works. That rarely works. So again, that's why females are more than likely than males to seek out help. Okay. Of the young women that seek help, more than 80% turn to friends and approximately 50% turn to a parent for help. So again, you're going to have more female, generally males too, but more females go to friends over family. Because again, as what I said earlier, not all, but a lot will think, I've done something wrong. I am the guilty party. I am in trouble. I definitely don't want to get in trouble with my parents, right? So I will go to a friend before I go to a family member. Okay. And also keep in mind that bottom statistic, only 1 in 3 teenagers in an abusive relationship will speak up or seek help. Okay. So yeah, that number is unacceptable. We need everyone to do that. So real quick, education and prevention. 81% of parents or guardians believe teen dating violence is not an issue or admit they know if it's an issue. Again, part of that is the communication. But again, this is where we as adults have to have that eye open. We have to be aware. We've gone through warning signs. We've gone through things to look for. We have to make sure to call it out. I know a lot of us in this field have that a gut feeling. If you feel in your gut something's not right, as I always encourage, go and investigate. You can just ask questions. You never know when that'll make a difference. You never know that person who is trying to reach out for help, doesn't know how to reach out for help. Maybe they just have that keen adult in their life to approach them and say, you know what, something in my gut doesn't feel right. And as I encourage a lot of parents I've talked to before, if you're wrong about that, you're wrong. But in a way, you're right, because now that teenager knows that you're going to go to them if something feels off. And that might open up a door later that you don't know anything about, okay, or don't know anything about yet. So as I always say, keep a keen eye on your kids, okay? Not only yours, but kids that you work around, okay? Look out for those warning signs that were discussed earlier, okay? And again, a lot of parents don't feel confident that they could recognize the signs. Yeah, so again, 58% of parents cannot correctly identify all the warning signs of abuse. So again, nothing against parents, but again, it's just a lack of education. So like I said, use your gut, go with your gut. If something feels off, please investigate. Don't tell yourself it's not a big deal, okay? So real quick, some prevention and programs. So yeah, let's try to prevent this before it begins, or try to catch it early on. The earlier the intervention, the better the results, okay? Not to say if we can't catch it later, we can do things, but the earlier you catch it, when they first start thinking about getting into a relationship, when they first start getting manipulated by an abuser, catching it early helps, okay? So real quick, when a teenager confides, don't be judgmental. Okay, remember, this is not your situation, this is theirs. Okay, do not take control of the situation. All right, unless it's a life-threatening emergency and you have to. Okay, do not ignore, no feelings. Do not ignore or downplay any feelings. If they're big and real to the teen, they're big and real to you. Okay, that'll be detrimental if a teen's coming to you with something that they need and you downplay it or don't think it's a big deal. Don't expect them to come to you in the future. That's when they go to their friends, or that's when they don't say anything at all, and that's detrimental. Okay. Also, do not speak for the teen. Let the teen express him or herself. Repeat what they are saying. So you don't go, so what you're really saying is no. Let them tell you what they're trying to tell you. If they have a problem coming out with the words, repeat what they say and help guide them through that conversation. That's different than talking for them. I hope that makes sense. Okay. And again, do not promise the information shared will be kept confidential. Okay. You can let them know you have to report it if it's a life-threatening emergency, if someone has been hurt, but let them know that you're a safe person to talk to. Okay. So hopefully just a few tips and a few pointers for you moving forward. Oh, I skipped through one of the slides a little quickly there. Real quick, a handful of dating recommendations. If you do have a teen that's involved in dating, consider double dating, because that's cool. That's what we're going to do, okay? Hopefully everyone's okay with that. And if not, it could be a warning sign, okay? Practice mock dating at the house. How embarrassing is that for the teen to act like they're going on a date with mom or dad? But again, this can help them down the road of like, hey, this is how the person you're dating should treat you on the date. Okay. You're reviewing everything about the date, what time you're leaving, who's coming to pick you up, who's going to drop you off, what time you're going home, where you're going. Be that intrusive parent. It's okay to be an intrusive parent. Okay, we're reviewing consequences of stuff you should be doing and should not be doing. And even the person that's coming to pick them up, you let them know the rules as well. If they cannot adhere to the rules, they cannot go on the date. Okay? All right. Any questions with that? And like I said, you can make up your own rules. I encourage you to just have a set. Make sure you're practicing. Okay? Few tips for digital safety. Okay, make sure you have the little trackers on their phone so you know where they're at all time. Encourage them not to share any passwords, no private information. They don't have to share that with the person that they're dating or going out with, because that is theirs. Teach them ownership. Teach them about boundaries, setting limits. And again, practice that mock stuff of what is okay and what is not okay, and what happens if something is not okay. All right. If we're out to dinner, we're going to this person's house, we didn't talk about that, so I'm not going. If you start treating me or saying stuff that's not okay, the date's over. Okay. If you've picked me up and I'm not wanting to be here, I need to know whom to call to come pick me up. Okay. And practice that stuff. Okay. So, some really quick safety planning. We just got done talking about that. Make sure they have a plan. Make sure you have a plan. Make sure you know the plan. Make sure you practice the plan before any date. Okay. Down below is the number to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE. Okay, please use that number if you need it. Again, 1-800-799-SAFE. All right, that is it for my presentation. So